Hello, everybody over at Madison High School, and welcome to week one of American Literature 2. Hi, I am Ariel Robinson. I was your professor for English 111, 112. And hopefully, knock on wood, we will not have a hurricane that interrupts the flow of our semester. I am so glad to be back with you. I know that last semester we had some bumps because of the hurricane, but here we are. We're all back again, and I think that we're going to have a wonderful semester. I'm going to spend the first half of this video kind of talking you through some housekeeping items, and then the second half of the video will be a lecture on Native American voices as you get kickstarted into our lovely class of American Literature 2. So, all right, let's get started. All right, so on the middle page, I've got your helpful links right here, including your 232 syllabus. And so I'll go over how you're graded here in just a moment. Um, and then we have a course by course schedule. I have some other resources here, like American Literature and Overview, so that you can kind of look through and see what are some of the ways in which American literature has transformed over time. And then also, I've got some overview notes, literature terms, and some guidelines on how to analyze literature here. And I know since you all had me last semester, you know that I use a lot of literary analysis as a way to control research and to focus in on deep concepts. And then we'll go over my Guide to Thrive and asynchronous classes as we go through. So what I want us to look at first, since this is the beginning of our week together, is the syllabus. And so I spent a good long time making the syllabus over winter break so that it was as accessible to all of you as possible, but then also making sure that it delves into some concepts that would not be redundant from last semester. So we're all asynchronous. And so one of the lessons that I learned last semester is I'm going to make sure that my video every week is going to be detailing and lecturing on concepts to help with clarity. And so many of you said that some of the confusing directions or the lack of clarity was a struggle. So that's my ultimate goal this semester, is to meet that and to adjust for that. So right here, you'll see that there's some basic information here for you: course objectives, education outcomes. What I want to direct you to is um, the grading criteria. So it's not going to be super different from last semester. I have to use a lot of AB text like focus points in order to make sure that like I'm meeting their guidelines. So forum posts, writing workshops, and class activities will be about 30%. Your responses, drafts, and your presentation is 25%, as is essay one and poetry critique. So, like, all of the writing will weigh in at about 25%. So, our reading responses, 25%, if we're drafting presentations, etc. Um, and then your playwright final exam, which we'll talk about more detail later, will be 20%. And so Mm, as you go through, like, all of this should be fairly straightforward. What I wanna make sure we talk about is AI. Okay, so before I go into detail about, like, how the semester looks, I wanna be very clear, like, since you guys are asynchronous, like, I know that you don't have me directly there with you to help coach you, and that becomes a bit of a challenge. So, what I'm going to ask you to do is use AI ethically and skillfully. What do I mean by that? Ethically and skillfully is where you are using AI as a way to build on your ideas, as well as a way to refine your ideas, as a way for you to find research, find guidelines. Um, I define the academic integrity with AI as it's not doing the work for you. So, as long as you are doing the work, the intellectual work, and AI is being used as a tool, I find that to be ethical. However, if I suspect that you are using AI, or if that you are no longer using your own mind as the primary source of the intellectual work, I will ask you to revise, or you will not be able to pass the assignment. So I consider that to be plagiarism. I also consider AI to be cheating if not used ethically. So If you have questions about what an ethical use of AI is, please let me know. As you're walking through the rest of this, I want you to know here are going to be the class activities we're going to focus on. Your essay one will be a community based topic about like American identity. Um, Writing workshops are going to be done nearly every week, which are about developing your own ideas for writing. Your forum posts, reading responses. You have a lot of experience with that at this point. You'll have one presentation that you do during this course, which will be focused on unheard voices in America. You'll do one poetry critique, larger assignment, and then your final exam will be reading a play and analyzing it by an American playwright. So we'll get into more detail about what that looks like later on this semester, but that is the grading criteria. So I also have your topic outline here with your course syllabus, and it goes kind of week by week. It might change a little bit over the course of the next 16 weeks. I'm really hoping that I can stick mostly to it. I've arranged it mostly by genre, by movement, and also making sure some unheard voices are represented here. However, life happens, hopefully not a hurricane, but life happens. And so I'm going to be flexible and I'll ask you to be flexible in case anything like that were to come up. So so the last thing I'm going to share with you before I give you the information on Native American literature for the week is I want you to look at the Guide to Thrive in Asynchronous Classes. So I adapted this from another teacher and kind of adjusted it based on what I noticed everybody went through last semester for an asynchronous class. So a couple of things that I want to make sure is clear is that I am available to meet by appointment, and sometimes I'll have like the ability for you to meet with me during like to ask questions. I will never require it because it is an asynchronous class. However, I will have that opportunity for you. So what I am going to ask is that you see three then me. And this is really just so that if you have checked the module on Moodle, watched the video, talked to people in your class, and you still not understand, email me. Let's make a meeting. Let's go. However, if you are not taking advantage of the resources that I've posted, then I'm not going to repeat myself. So just please make sure that you're using the resources as necessary. Also, as we are going fully online, I do expect that simply logging on and doing a couple of tasks is not what you consider to be active engagement in an online course. Active engagement is posting the forum post, responding, making sure that you are bouncing ideas off of each other, making sure that you are present and checking things every week, watching the weekly video, being prepared, doing the reading. That is what is going to be the most successful key for the course. If you log in halfway through and try to cram out a bunch of work, it will be subpar at best and it will not be fully representative of your growth. I want to see you grow. That's what I'm here for. So start at the beginning of the week, use a planner, write things down. As you're looking at short writing assignments, make a to-do list per week. Major assignments, make sure that you are planning them out and chunking them out over time. And if you need me to help you, I will help you, but submit everything on time unless you talk to me. If you talk to me, we'll make a plan. I'm usually pretty flexible, but if you just don't submit things and I have to start tracking you down, it's not going to benefit you in the way that I want it to. So please make sure that you're doing that. If you have questions about any of this, please of course reach out to me. I'm more than happy to assist you since you are getting to be college students and you're transitioning out. So let's go ahead and get into the work for the week. And if anything, if you're not sure of anything that I just talked about, please make sure that you let me know. So, what we're going to do this week, we've already done the course orientation. So you will need your Norton Anthology of American Literature, Volume C, and it's going to be the one that says 1845 to 1914. And so you're going to read Ghost Dance Songs, The Life Among the Paiute, and then School Days of an Indian Girl. There is also a YouTube video that I've posted here for you about the ghost dance songs. Your reading reflection for this week, which you know what a one-page paper is. I'll post again what that looks like, but the directions are on here. So, what you're going to be doing for this week is you're going to do a reading response on the ghost dance songs and a forum post engagement on the anatomy of American literature. And so this one is a much more light piece, but it is focusing on like what is the American existence, like what defines American literature. All right. So for this week, what I'm going to do, if you can click on Native American slides, that's where I'm going to be. Okay. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of detail on Native American Lit. Okay, so Indigenous voices. So we're going to start our study of American literature in Indigenous literature, past, present, and future. So, kind of understanding the cultural context, it's rich, it's varied, it's vast, right? But it is the literature of historic witness. Past is always present, right? There's a balance and a relational and relative worldview, but there's a big focus on natural order, and oral tradition is very important to Native cultures. Colonization impact is usually highlighted. And then you have many texts that focus on themes of survival, like resistance, resilience, and the fight for sovereignty. So, some themes that come up in Native American literature, you have a connection to nature and the significance and sacredness of nature, identity and belonging, tensions between Indigenous and Western identities, history and memory. So, reclaiming erased and silenced histories, as well as an embrace of spirituality, and then a discussion of cultural appropriation and misrepresentation in mainstream literature, the loss of language. We see this especially in like Cherokee cultures and like preserving Cherokee in this area. And then, of course, the marginalization of the literary canon, right? So like actual native voices being put as the forefront in in the curriculum itself. So literary tropes. So in literary tropes, you have things like cyclical narratives, like time is kind of nonlinear in these pieces, oral tradition, like repetition, rhythm, storytelling. You also have symbolism like animals, nature, spiritual entities, and then there's often a blending of like poetic elements, fiction, and like memoirs in these pieces. Some notable authors, Sherman Alexie, we read last semester. He's problematic. He's been accused of sexual harassment. And so there are some elements there that have to be addressed. But he wrote like Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven and The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. Louise Erdrich wrote Love Medicine. Louise Leslie Marmon Silko wrote Ceremony. And Scott Momaday wrote House Made of Dawn. And then one of my personal favorite, Tommy Orange, and he wrote There. So many, and many Native authors that are notable. So what you'll notice in the Ghost Dance pieces is that it's a spiritual movement that was by a prophet named Wavaka, and he had a vision of the earth's renewal, equality, and reconciliation. But the ghost dances themselves kind of embody hope during a time of crisis. So things to think about, like what emotions and images come to mind when you think of the ghost dance, like after you read the selection. And then in the reflection that you're going to read, like there is this discussion of dance as a symbol of hope, unity, renewal, and how his interpretation adds to our understanding of that ghost dance. That's something to think about. In the Black Elk piece, here's some questions for you to ask about that. Like, what did Black Elk see and feel during the ghost dance? Like, what images stood out to him? And how does the storytelling style convey the experience? And some things that were brought up in the ghost dance in the reading, things to think about, like the unusual absence of the drum in the traditional dance, silence as a metaphor, faith as collective spirit and driving force. So, what might the absence of the drum symbolize in that context? Why did the US military see the ghost dance as a threat? And what are some of the driving forces behind like the misconceptions of government actions and then the forced relocations? And so some additional things in Eastman's account of Wounded Knee, like how the storytelling is similar, but then also like how they both kind of interact differently with this idea of like what is the native experience in response to Western influence, right? So what emotions does his account bring up in regards to Wounded Knee there? And then you've got, Sarah Winnemucca, I hope I didn't mispronounce her name, but she talks specifically about, like, the idea of becoming indoctrinated into Western culture and, like, what it was like to be in these white spaces. So, like, how does she use fear in her storytelling? And how does she use cultural elements in her narrative? Why does she use this approach, right? And so what is the inheritor and the invader, and how does this passage that we're reading differ from the rest of her narrative that we see as it goes by? Like, how does it build on itself? And as you're kind of going through, I've got some more things on here, but I want to make sure I'm wrapping this video up pretty quick. But basically, how do schools attempt to erase indigenous culture? How do they focus here on like assimilating indigenous voices? How do they focus um, on this experience of like becoming whiter, and trying to fight for like cultural individuality? So these are just some additional questions to ask, right? So how did Zikalasa's experience shape her future path? How do these texts that we read all as a whole contribute to our understanding of history? How do you see the past influencing the present for Indigenous peoples? And how do these authors make the invisible visible? So these are just things to kind of think about when you're reading Indigenous work. It's just like, how do we see these people like establishing their identity amidst being assimilated into white culture? And since this is kind of one of the starting places before we start getting into American literature, like how do we define like American literature and including these voices? So that's it for now. I think I've yapped at you enough for today, but I hope that you all have a great week. And please reach out to me if you have any questions about our course. And I can't wait to engage more with you. So have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye.